Hello everyone, this is Naz from nazislam.com. So in this video, we are going to talk about the routing in ExpressJS. So we will create a small application where we will develop some REST endpoints, and we will know the differences of get and post endpoints. And for doing that, we're going to use the JSON placeholder. So this is a fake service. As you can see that it says like free fake API for testing and prototyping. Since we will need some sorts of a resource to retrieve some data points and also create new items to the resource, we will use this service as a way so that we don't have to create our own database. So as you can see that this has like these resources. So these are the different resources like posts. So posts, comments, albums. So if I go in any one of these, right, you will see that there are like all the dummy responses here. So which will be like really applicable for our case. So what we can do is that let's take one of these, let's say the users API, right? And if I zoom in a little bit, right, so you should see that there are a few users here, and on the first attempt you might not be seeing actually this in that way. Using this particular Safari plugin, which is called the JSON pip. So if I open it up somewhere, all right. So so here actually, as you can see that if you just install this on your Safari, so it will show a JSON. If it shows like a text only, it will have a proper structure. So which will be easier for your eyes. And I will also add a link, similar extension for Chrome browser. So let me close this window and let's go back to our resources here. Yeah, so since like we'll have an endpoint to create some new data to the resource and also retrieve some information in our application. So we'll use this dummy database. So let's pick like maybe one of them. So let's say that I pick like this one. So users, right? So here, as you can see that there are 10 users, and we are making a get call to this particular endpoint, right? So let's create a Node.js Express application. Okay, all right. So let's get to our working directory. So I will go in my directory where I put all the projects, and I will create a new folder for our project. So I call it routing in Express. And after I navigate to the root folder, let me open the folder in a VS Code. Okay, all right. So okay, let me bring up our terminal window here. So what we're gonna do is that we're gonna initiate our Node.js application with command npm init, and we can keep the default values for now, right? So let's bring up a file app.js. So we will import Express, since this is an Express application, right? So import express from express. So here we're using the ECMAScript 6. That's why you see that we're using the import statement instead of the require statement. All right, let's initiate our application here with const app equals express, and also define a port for our application. So I will have 4000. So now at this point we can listen to, oh, so there is a typo here. Yeah, we can listen to our application, we can listen to our port here. And let's say console.log server is running on port. All right, okay. So also let me update actually the spacing to 2. Okay, awesome. Okay, so at this point we will install a few npm dependencies. So let me clear our terminal window first, and I will install express and node fetch as a dependency, and I will also need to install the nodemon as a dev dependency, so that this automatically updates the server and restarts the server whenever we save our file. Okay, all right, so let me get to the package.json to see how it looks like at this point. Yeah, so as you can see that we have added the dependencies here on this section, and also the dev dependency as a nodemon here. Yeah, okay, so since we're using the ECMAScript 6 syntax here, right, we need to add a type property in our package.json, and it should say module. All right, and also to make the nodemon work for our application, we need to pass restartable. So then whenever we type rs, this restarts. So that will be a manual restart, but for a automatic restart we need a delay of, let's say, 500 milliseconds. So what this means is that for every save, whenever we save a file, for the 500 milliseconds it will restart the server. Okay, and let's also have a custom script here, start, which will call nodemon app.js. Okay, so now let's go back to our application here, and we can now run our application with npm start, and let's see our nodemon starts our server. Okay, yeah, so as you can see that our server has started on the port 4000, but as you can see that we don't have any route defined yet, right? So we just cannot test it. So let's define a few route. So for example, just have like app.get. Yeah, for the root, let's take a request and response object, and we will send a JSON object which will have a, like, let's say the current route to be the slash here, just to test our code at this point, right? All right, okay, so let's open up our Postman, and let's try our application here, right? So we're gonna do localhost, and let's have only the route here, root route here, and if I hit send. Yeah, as you can see that the current route is slash. So this means that our application is working properly. Okay, all right. So we're gonna make a request to this particular URL, which will return us all the users in our application. So we can define an endpoint here. Let's say /users, right? And let's also import fetch from node fetch, right? So what we're gonna do here is that okay, let's have it this way, fetch, right, the endpoint that we want to call, and once we properly make a proper connection to the endpoint, we will get a response object, and let's get the JSON form of that, and also we're going to get the JSON, and what we're gonna do is that we're gonna spit out that JSON in our Postman response. So as you can see that this syntax and this is JSON is the same, so we are not going to use this one anymore. Yeah, so we make a fetch call to this particular endpoint, and whatever the response object we are getting, we return from this promise that we return the JSON for it, and from this promise we spit out that JSON to our response. Okay, so if I save this and let's get back to our Postman, and let's call our endpoint here, right, and hit send. Yeah, so you will see that this is returning us all the users from the server. So here we are making a get call to a server, and which returns the list of the users that are stored for that particular endpoint. So we can also instead of, let's say that instead of, so if we want to like pass a particular user, right, so what we want to do is that instead of getting all these 10 users, we want to get any one user, right? So there is one documentation for it. You would probably see here is that, so yeah, so here we can also call post. So if I click here, right, so which will return us a list of posts, right? But what if we just add like post/1, right? So which would return only one post, right? So this is what we want to implement here, but for the users case, right? So let's say like if I copy this, right, and if I paste it here with a user, let's say 4, right, so which would return us this particular object, right? So if we want to implement it in our Express application, right, so what we're going to do is that let's have a get, and which would make a call to, let's say, the users, and there will be a path parameter. We can call it user ID. Let's take request and response object, right? So let's have assign the user ID from the path parameter, right? So we're gonna do the dot params dot user ID, right? So whatever we pass to the parameter, right, we can get it through the request.params object here. So we're gonna call it rec.params.user_id, and which should return that particular user ID, and which will assign that user ID to this particular variable here. So at this point we can make a fetch call, right? So let's copy our user's endpoint, and as we know that this will take a user ID, so I add that as well. And once we get a response from there, we will cast it to a response.json, and then we want to spit out that JSON to our res.json. Okay, all right. So let's save it and let's get to our Postman here, right? So if I add /4 and I hit send, okay, you should see that this is only returning us this particular user. And as you can see that we're not hard coding anything, right? So we can pass any value for the users. So we can also return the 7th user. So if we also get to the browser and we bring out the 7, so you will see that the response is the same as what is getting back in the JSON placeholder. Awesome. So the other thing is that we can also post a new user, right? Say for example, we can create a new user, and as you can see that this user list has 10 users in there, right? So creating a new user will have a user ID of 11, because that will be the newly added user, right? So what we can do is that let's get back to our code here. Okay, so the other thing is that while creating the user, we will and this will be a post endpoint, right? And the basic difference between a get and post endpoint is that the get endpoint does not take a payload or a request body, but whenever we make a post call, we can pass a payload or a request body along with the call. So how does that look like, right? So let's make a post endpoint which will say like users. Yeah, so it will only it may only have users because the user will have all those different fields which we can pass as a request object. So let's have res, right? So what we want to do is that const new user, right? And we want to get this from the rec.body, right? So rec.body will pass a particular object, and that will be assigned to this new user, and we will feed this new user to our endpoint so that we can make a post call and pass that user along with that endpoint. Okay, so so the way actually it will work, right? is that this should be a post endpoint. So let's call it post, right? And so this one will be users, right? So and it will be a post, and also with that there will be a JSON body, right? So what we can pass as the body, right, is very similar to these fields, but not necessarily that you need to fill out all the fields, right? So let's have, so for example, the name, username and email as the minimum. So let's put them here. Just closing the object and just click on this beautify, so it will format properly. Right, so in order to get this one from the request object, right, we need one more thing here to add, which is called the middleware, right? So what will happen is that we want to have a middleware express.json, and also we want to call it express.url encoded, and within the parentheses just pass extended to be false. All right, so now this our application should be able to get a application JSON type of content from the request object. Okay, so okay, so this will be a fetch call, as we have already been calling, right? So let's call this endpoint, right? And through this endpoint we can also pass some options, right? So within the options we want to pass the body as json.stringify, and then the new user, and also the header, right? Okay, it should be the content type, to be application.json, application/json. All right, okay, so we have defined this object here. So now what we can do is, let's call then whatever we get the response object, get the JSON of it, and let's also get the JSON from there and spit out to the rest.json. Okay, all right, so let's get over to the Postman here, and yeah, so let's just make sure that this one is a post endpoint, so that we can send an object through the request body. And so this one should be raw and this should be a JSON format. Okay, let's hit send. Oh, okay, I believe okay, so yeah, I believe our endpoint should be actually users, not user. Oh, okay, the other thing is that it should be the method should be post. So unless we set the method to post, it will be by default it will be a get call. So let's go, and yeah, as you can see that it created a new user with the user ID 11. So as you can see that it incremented one user to the database and returned us that particular user only. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you learned a few things regarding the routing in a Node.js Express application. We'll see you in the next video. Thanks so much. Bye.